morning, everyone. As Father said, today we celebrate the feast of Christ the King, our universal King. And it was back in 1925 that Pope Pius XI said that he wanted to establish an annual feast day to remind Catholics in all around the world that Jesus Christ is Lord of the universe, and that our lives should be modeled after Jesus Christ himself. He said that if Christ is truly our King, he must reign in our minds, in our wills, and in our hearts, so that is to make all of us more like the King that we serve. In today's gospel, Jesus was arrested. He was subjected to trial by his enemies and found guilty of blasphemy, of equating himself with God. So Jesus was brought to Pilate, and Pilate asked, and you can tell it was in a very condescending tone of voice, "Are you the King of the Jews?" And then he goes on to say, "Well, what have you done?" And instead of answering, Jesus simply says, he speaks about the nature of his kingship, and that it does not belong to this world. Pilate said, "So then you are a king?" And Jesus said, "If you say so." And Jesus goes on to explain, the reason I was born, the reason why I came into the world, is to give witness to the truth. Jesus went on to say, "Anyone committed to the truth hears my voice." And he said this to open the people's hearts to the real meaning of life, of their existence, and of creation. Jesus' words challenged Pilate, and they certainly continue to challenge us today. He wants us to daily ask ourselves, who is our King? What and who comes first in our lives? Today's celebration of Christ the King emphasizes our need to place Jesus first in our lives at all times. Putting him first means that we carefully listen to his voice of truth and that we live by it. In everything that we do and say, Christ desires that we listen to his voice. Are we? Well, we certainly try to. In today's world, very secular media distracts us, right? And certainly entices us to listen to everything but God's voice. We're bombarded every day with so many conflicting, violent, and immoral messages. And it's no wonder that the thoughts and actions of so many people run contrary to the truth. But Jesus reminds us to be ever aware of, and intently listen to his truthful message. Jesus came into this world so that our minds would be filled with his thinking and his behavior. It's often said, certainly I say it often, is, God shared in our humanity so that we can ultimately share in his divinity. I realize I'm preaching to a faithful Catholic community this morning, but I'll say it anyway. Above all, we listen to the voice of Jesus by actively participating in the celebration of the Eucharist every Sunday. Well, in addition to that, welcoming others to join us and extending a friendly smile to those sitting in the pews around us. These, as well as performing works of mercy, praying the rosary, listening to Catholic radio and TV, and surfing the web, Catholic websites, are additional ways in which we're able to listen to the voice of Jesus and honor him as the King in our lives. And in doing so, we follow the truth. We find peace in our lives, and we're able to share that peace with others. For if we enter Christ's kingdom and reign with him, we have to be willing to boldly witness to the truth. Christ the King says that those who enter his kingdom will be those who care for him and every person they meet who is hungry, thirsty, a stranger, ill, in prison, or otherwise in need. Do we enter the kingdom through this type of service, or do we just pass by these folks? Christ the King announced that his kingdom is one of mercy, and that only the merciful will receive the mercy necessary to enter his kingdom. Do we forgive everyone who's trespassed against us? Christ the King said to enter his kingdom, we need to be willing to be persecuted and hated because of him. Are we willing to acknowledge Christ before others, even if we're mocked for it, or even murdered for it? So, united with him as our King, and united through within him with each other, let's willingly ask Jesus to strengthen us and encourage us to courageously give witness to him, to his truth, and to his love, in the midst of a world that continues to want to push him away. Jesus came to save us. He brought the light of truth back into our darkened and confused, troubled world. And if we listen to him, he'll lead us into his eternal kingdom, where he'll reign forever and ever as Christ the King of Kings.